Whether you're watching the Netflix show or reading the comics, Umbrella Academy fans are dying to know the answer to one burning question. What happened to Ben Hargreaves, aka Number 6, aka the Horror? We know he's dead, but let's see what we can dig up. In the comics, the flashback scenes we do see of Ben show some sort of whipping tentacles emerging from his stomach, and he's insanely powerful. But we really get no insight into what kind of personality he had as a young child. Sir Reginald Hargreaves does mention in a personal note in the comics that Number 6 is easily manipulated due to enthusiastic, if naive, nature. And in Vanya's book, she writes about the Horror, calling him the kindest of my siblings. But he was so eager to please Father, he was easily manipulated, dragged into Father and Luther's little games, and those two simply let him die. Dr. Pogo reveals in Apocalypse Suite Number 5 in a diary excerpt written during the children's late teen years prior to the death of Horror that, quote, none of the children want to be heroes, and none less than the Horror Number 6. He's only trying to please Hargreaves and Spaceboy. I suppose this is normal enough for a teenage human, but he's not learning how to be an individual in his own right. We do see more of Ben's personality displayed in the show. In flashbacks, he seems like a sad kid, reluctant to be a part of this crime-fighting team. In episode 1, we see the young Umbrella Academy respond to a bank robbery. It's obvious that Ben does not want any part of this, but his brother Number 1, Luther, persists.
Do we really have to do this? Come on, Ben. There's more guys in the vault.
Begrudgingly, Ben goes in, and the shadows speak volumes. You hear screams, see people getting flung around, blood splattered everywhere.
Can we go home now?
After foiling the bank robbery, the other Umbrella Academy members stand before the press, beaming with pride. Ben seems disengaged, though.
Can you tell us what happened inside?
There's not much to go on, so let's really read into this. In the beginning of episode 1, we can see notes on Sir Reginald Hargreaves' desk, and it clearly says, Number 6 seems to be angry. It's hard to make out that last word, but even rigid, emotionless Sir Hargreaves could see Ben was unhappy. You may remember in the comics, Pogo says none of the kids want to be heroes, but in the show, we see a different story. Besides Ben and Klaus, the rest of the Umbrella Academy seem thrilled about using their powers and fighting crime during their childhood. From Pogo's analysis and what we have seen, we can conclude that Ben was not happy with himself or his situation. If your heart is not in something, you will not be performing at 100%. A half-hearted Ben could have had a tragic slip-up that led to his demise. The show drops hints about Ben's death throughout the first episode. In the flashing family photos, we see Ben eventually disappear. We also see a statue built in Ben's honor with a plaque below, grimly inscribed with, "May the darkness within you find peace in the light." So what happened to Ben? We really have little to go on here. In the second issue of Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite, we learn that Number 1 Luther, aka Spaceboy, feels responsible or some guilt. He's seen with Number 3 Allison, aka the Rumor, in front of Ben's statue, and she says, "It wasn't your fault, you know. I know everyone blames you for what happened to Ben, but none of us knows what really happened that day." Luther quickly changes the topic, and if you think that's out of callousness, maybe not. In the comics, Luther has a robot assistant when he's in space. The robot's name? Ben. Perhaps Luther is paying homage to his fallen brother, trying to preserve his memory. Or maybe it's a chilling reminder of what went wrong that day, so it will never happen again. In the comics and the show, Ben's statue is not a child. The statue looks like a young man, a life taken too soon. And since Ben's ghost in the show is an adult, that further backs that idea. We don't see this scene play out in the show, but it is interesting to point out that in episode 1, when Number 1 Luther and Number 2 Diego, aka the Kraken, are fighting, Luther throws a punch at Diego, and Luther accidentally knocks Ben's statue off its pedestal, and the head cracks off. Luther, in the show and comics, is the de facto leader of the group, and in the first episode, it is Luther telling Ben to go into the vault. We can assume most of their missions went down like this, with Luther pushing Ben to take action that he probably did not want to do. Luther may have ordered Ben to do something that ended up taking his life, or did Ben finally fight back with some sad result? Did Ben flee and fall into some trouble? What did Luther do? We pose this question to creator Gerard Way, and he teased that Luther may not be entirely to blame.
I think they all maybe have some involvement in Ben's death, yeah.
That changes things quite a bit. Knowing that everyone shoulders the blame for Ben's death means that it might not be solely Luther's fault. It could be that Luther simply feels the most responsible because he's the team leader. Unlike the comics, we actually get to see Ben's ghost in the show, talking with Klaus quite a bit. Ben is kind of like Klaus's Jiminy Cricket, trying to keep him on the straight and narrow.
Maybe I just want to hang out with my brother. Not you.
When Ben is talking to Klaus, we don't see any injuries or visible trauma. In episode 4, when Klaus talked to the dead, his ability, while kidnapped by Cha-Cha and Hazel, it's quite apparent how these people were killed.
She chopped my hands off and let me bleed to death in the bathtub.
For now, the biggest clue to take away here is that perhaps the whole family was involved in Ben's death, and whatever happened to him, it doesn't seem like he was taken out in a traditional way. We are talking about Umbrella Academy here, with time travel, mind control, superpowers, the gamut. Ben's cause of death seems far from normal. Any theories on what happened to Ben? Tell us in the comments section. And don't forget to check out our Umbrella Academy review and our video explaining Vanya and the ending. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.